Hey Carter, how are you?
Good, AJ. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
First off, congratulations on The Passenger. What a thrill ride. And it kind of reminded me a lot. I don't know if you've seen it, the Charlie Sheen movie back from like the 1980s called The Boys Next Door. And the way you wrote the way the dialogue was written and constructed on screen is just amazing. How was it like working on The Passenger?
wait 1 second. Is Boys Next Door the one with like uh Charlie Sheen and Maxwell Caulfield? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
okay? I actually have not seen that, but I was listening to a podcast about it the other day, and it just went to the top of my list. Um, I mean, I think that with a movie like this, where the majority of the film happens between two characters, like you have to have a relationship and like a sort of a rapport between them that stays interesting. Um, and just from the first time I read the script, it was like it came to life in a way that I found so interesting. That something so horrible could happen early on in the movie, and yet I was like 60, 70 pages in, and like I found myself like rooting for the quote unquote bad guy in a
Right.
way that kind of took me by surprise, and I thought it was kind of a fascinating thing to dive into and explore.
And Kyle Gallner has kind of been all over the place lately in the indie scene. I mean, he was even on the big screen in Smile last year, which was phenomenal. How was it like casting somebody of his caliber as the main villain in The Passenger? Because what he did here is really special.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think as soon as you start to think about Benson, the character, as like not a villain, like he's a guy that does some horrific things, that there's no excuse for the stuff that he does. But I think that what's so interesting was taking the approach of like, okay, well, he's a person with trauma and baggage and a whole life that has happened up to the start of this film, and that's what created this character. And that there was something, Kyle, just from the beginning, as soon as his name came up in casting conversation, it was like, yes, that's, I think he is, you know I mean, yes, he's kind of like an indie, scream king darling.
Right. Yeah.
But beyond that, he's just like, he had the sort of the quality of like, I don't know what he's gonna do, but also, he's charming, and he's, like you kind of he also, Benson as a character needed to be someone who you kind of found yourself like kind of enjoying this time with, which is gives rise to a lot of like complicated emotions, I think, because
Yeah.
you don't want to be liking him as much as you do, I think.
Right. And it's so like torn for the audiences, right? Like he delivers such an outstanding performance. And of course, as a journalist, you never want to compare like characters or actors to each other because it gets kind of redundant to a point. But I would say he's almost channeling in his inner Nicolas Cage in this movie as well, what he does.
Yeah, yeah,
And just God, that, diner scene near the end, that had to be tough to film as well, just to see everybody really deliver their all in that
yeah,
sequence. Had to be like, wow.
yeah. Well, the approach that I took to that was, we were very much shooting very long takes. Like we would go through the entire, like it wasn't something that I was breaking it up into, this is this line and that's this. Like we were, we sort of, I wanted to give us the freedom to let the whole thing unfold, and it was as much as anything for Kyle, for him to find those rhythms within those, sort of those words, which just became so much easier when it wasn't about stopping and starting and stopping and starting. Like, I think a lot of times that's how it's done, but I, especially with material like this, really like to kind of let things play out from beginning to end.
And how is it like having Paramount Pictures and Blumhouse behind this as well? That's going to be exciting for this film.
Yeah, I mean that's exciting. Because it means that people are going to see the film. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're
Yeah.
you know they'll they're making sure that people find it and that it's out there. It's one thing to make a, a little micro budget indie film that plays at festivals and kind of struggles to find its audience. But when you've got a Blumhouse behind you and a Paramount, like it really means that they're going to do everything possible to get it in front of the audience that is going to love it.
And Blumhouse is top tier when it comes to horror amongst its fans. So people are going to watch it just because it's produced or distributed by Blumhouse
Yeah,
as well. So
yeah,
that has to be boostful to the film and their rareness as well.
yeah. I mean, I think that horror genre fans in general are so supportive and
Yeah.
so willing to give stuff a chance. I'm a huge genre fan, like, and it can be a film where I've never heard of it, have never heard of the director, never heard of any of the actors, and I will still buy it or rent it. Like, just I'll give it a chance. And I think that I'm not alone in the genre community. So I think that's one of the things that I love so much about horror and genre. Yes, it's even better when it has the Blumhouse stamp, but it doesn't even necessarily need to in order to find
Right.
its audience often.
And so, what are you looking forward to the most with audiences watching The Passenger?
I'm hoping that audiences like fall in love with Benson and Randy in the same kind of weird, messed up way that I did. Like that was what took me by surprise. Like when I read the script and I was like, why am I rooting for this guy, this murderer? Like it made no sense to me. And I think that what Kyle did with the performance and with creating Benson, like just took it even further. And I think that there's something really interesting about you know villains who are not necessarily defined by one bad thing. I mean, yes, it's horrible what Benson does, but he's more than that one thing. And who are we to say that if what's happened to him in the past that led to him making those choices? Like, I think that's something that I always found really interesting about the script from the very beginning.
And what did you find interesting about Johnny's character as well in The Passenger?
Well, I think I probably saw a little bit of myself in Johnny, at like my high school self, like just
Yeah.
the kind of the path of least resistance. Like, if I just go like this and I can disappear, and no one will pick on me, and I'll make it through the other end. And so there was that. Um, and I think that the he's the one that changes the most in the film. Like, there's such a I mean, it's a slow and gradual thing, but I think that how he stands up at the end of the film and what he's able to do that he would not have been able to do in the beginning of the film. That was a really fun sort of arc to examine and to plot.
Well,
um
Carter, before I let you go, I got to ask you, since you're on Infamous Horror, what are some of your favorite horror movies or genre movies?
um I love The Untamed. I love The Brood. I love Climax. I love Shivers. Um, I like Friday the 13th Part 2. There's so many.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, Carter, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really fun, and congratulations on The Passenger.
Thanks so much.